Our next storyteller is also a first-time storyteller at the Next to Normal, Gary Justis. Gary Justis studied sculpture, working towards his Master of Fine Arts at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, where he taught as adjunct faculty until taking a position at Northwestern University in 1991. He took a position at Illinois State University Woonsock Kim School of Art in 1998, where he taught sculpture for 25 years. He is now retired as Professor Emeritus in Fine Arts. He continues to work in the areas of kinetics, photography, printmaking, and writing. He has exhibited sculpture at the Whitney Museum of American Art, at Philip Morris, New York, right here at the McLean County Arts Center, the new Museum of Contemporary Art in New York, and the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago. He has also exhibited video works and photographic works at the Los Angeles Center for Digital Arts, PH21 Gallery in Budapest, Hungary, and the World Valid Hall in Barcelona, Spain. Let's welcome Gary.
I love that song. Wow, Mike, that was good. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. I appreciate you coming out to hear me, and thank you for inviting me to do this. Try to imagine Chicago in December. If you've ever been to Chicago in December, many of you have. Okay, I'm at a bus stop on Halsted Street, just a little ways from Greektown. And it's snowing. There's slushy snow on the sidewalks, and it's real dirty snow the way it gets in Chicago sometimes. And it was snowing pretty hard at the time. I mean, even the streetlights were afraid to come on because the snow was just so thick. And so I was coming back to my studio on 18th Street South from a party where I drank a lot of beer with my buddies, and I was headed home. I didn't have any money with me. I spent the last of my money on a bus pass. So I looked down the street. I was waiting for the bus at this bus stop, and I saw a lone figure walking up towards the bus stop from Greektown, and I didn't think much about it. And I just looked down and kind of twiddled my thumbs, and I heard the door open to the bus stop, and then I heard, "Stick up, man, stick up. I want to see a lot of money. Give me your money." And I remember saying, "No," to myself, I said this. "No, not me. No, this can't be happening to me. No way." And so very foolishly, I reached down and I grabbed my checkbook, which I had with me, and I handed it to the guy. And he looks at it real puzzled, and he says, "Checks are not going to do me any good, man. Here." Hands it back to me. And I thought to myself, well, that was stupid. And I looked at the gun that he was holding and pointing at my crotch, and I thought to myself, well, if anything's ever happened to you, like a trauma like this, sometimes you just get all passive as a defense mechanism. It kind of portends that you're going into shock, okay? So I thought, I don't want to go into shock. I'm going to try and get through this thing and not get shot. So I looked at the gun that is pointing at my thighs and my crotch, and I thought to myself, ooh, Smith & Wesson, Model 17. I'd love to look at that. So I watched the way he was holding the gun, and he was so relaxed and so composed. He was holding the gun, and the gun is a very heavy gun, and it looked like it was going to fall out of his hand because his hand was so relaxed. And I thought to myself, I could probably reach over and just pull that gun right out of his hand. And then suddenly I heard this voice in the back of my head say, "No!" So I said, I had my hands up, and I said, "Look, I'm going to reach in my pocket and get whatever coin I have, and I'll give it to you." And so I reached in my pocket, and I dug deep, and I came up with, 2 quarters and a nickel. And I handed it to him, and he took it, and he looked at it, and he just chuckled, and he shook his head. And that gave me just enough time to hear the brakes of the bus, because the bus came. And the bus was just outside the door, not 20 feet away. He saw the bus, he spun around, put the gun in his belt, and he took off and walked towards Roosevelt Avenue. Well, needless to say, I was very nervous, kind of like I am now. But I was shaking. So I went to get on the bus. The bus driver looked at me and said, "Man, you've seen a ghost." I said, "No, that guy is walking up towards Roosevelt, just robbed me at gunpoint." And so the bus driver said, "Okay." He stopped the bus and he pulled the brake and he said, "I'm calling the cops." So he calls the police. It took the police about 60 seconds to get there because they just happened to be nearby. They ran up under the bus and they said, "Who's the guy that got robbed?" And, and I think there were two other people on the bus besides me, and they were sitting behind me, and I raised my hand. And the cop looks over my head and says, "Not you, I know who you are." And somebody else had held up their hand. So I said, I did. The guy's medium height, medium build, Caucasian, very nice clothes, Italian shoes. And the cop looked at me and said, "Italian shoes?" I said, "Yeah, very expensive shoes." Okay, so they ran and got back in the car and they took off. And the bus driver looked at me and said, "What do you want us to do?" And I said, "Take me home." And he says to me, "18th Street, right?" And I looked at him real puzzled. I thought to myself, man, I love this bus line. So he takes me to 18th Street and lets me off, and I walk these 4 very scary blocks back to my studio where I made my work and where I lived. And I went inside, and my dog was pacing around the food dish, and I fed her, and then I said, "Let's go for a walk, but first," now get me, I was very scared at this point. I was very afraid, when you go through something like that. You think the world is conspiring against you. It's not, but that's what you think if you've gone through a trauma like that. So I did one of the most foolish things I've ever done in my life. I happened to have a little pistol, a Derringer, a single-shot Derringer. I broke it open, I put a shell in it, and put it inside my mitten. It was very cold outside, so I thought nobody's going to mess with me. So I took the dog outside, Alex, my dog, and we walked to this place, her favorite place, and she did her business. So I was coming back across 18th Street, and I hear this engine revving very high, and I look towards Halstead Street, and I see this cop car coming towards me at a very, very high speed. And I think, well, I better freeze. So I waited until they stopped, and one of the policemen jumped out, and he held up a gun by the trigger guard and just let it dangle. He said, "Yeah, 22 caliber, long rifle. You're glad you're still walking." And I said, "Yeah, I'll tell you." And he said, "You should come to the station with us and identify the guy. Will you do that?" I said, "You caught him?" They said, "Yeah, we chased down the bus all the way to Bridgeport, and he told us where he dropped you, and it's a miracle we found you." I said, "Yeah, it is." So I said, "Let me put my dog away and I'll go with you." So I went and put the dog away, came back and got in the car. Okay, we're going to the station, and I realized I've got a gun in my mitten. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't ditch it in the car. I can't throw it out the window. The cops will find it. What am I going to do? And it was beginning to get very sweaty and slippery inside my glove, so it slid down to the end of the mitten, and I could just kind of keep it close to my coat. So we get to the station, and we go into the station, and the 2 cops that come in with me, this was before metal detectors, obviously. So we come in. The 2 policemen who brought me in, they checked their guns with a desk sergeant. And as they took me to a waiting room, the desk sergeant said, "Hey, you're the Vic, right? Gary, is that your name? Here, let's hang up your coat and mittens over here." So I took a long breath, I thought to myself, and I said, you know, I'm really cold. I think I'll just keep my stuff on. So the cops were gone doing paperwork or something. They assigned a detective to me. The detective came out into the waiting room and sat beside me, and he said, here's the guy's arrest record. It was about 6 pages long, you know. And I said, why is this guy not in jail? And they said, well, we just can't get anything to stick with this guy. He said, however, with you, he admitted that he robbed you. And so he's pled guilty already. And he said, you just have to identify him. So he took me down this hallway to this very grimy door with a very grimy intercom. And he pushed the intercom button and he said the guy's name. The guy came over and he was pacing back and forth and he was real nervous and sweaty. And he looked at the one-way mirrored glass that I was looking into. And I said, they can't see me, can they? No, it's one-way glass. And he stood there kind of rocking back and forth and then he spat on the glass. So I knew that he knew that I was identifying him. So the detective had me fill out tons of paperwork. And they said, well, we'll take you home now, but you have to show up in this guy's hearing. And I said, okay, sure. So they took me home, and I still had that gun tucked in my mittens. I never took it off. So they get me home, and I said, thank you, detective, and please thank the officers who helped in this affair. I'm really tired, I'm nervous, I'm scared. And the detective said, don't worry, he's from a nice family, he's just the bad apple of that family. I happen to know them. You know, and when I interviewed him, he said he thought he might have to shoot you in the thigh bone. And I thought, that's pretty strange. He said, yeah, the guy's a real rocket scientist. And so he said, another thing, Gary, don't go carrying weapons around. This isn't the Old West, you know. And to this day, I have no idea how he knew that I had that in my glove and why he didn't do anything to me. So anyway, I walked the dog and then came back, and there was an envelope laying on my stoop that led up to my studio, and I picked it up, and there was an angel, obviously a kid's drawing of an angel floating above a house, and written in a kid's handwriting, it said, sing, angels are watching over you. I brought it back in, and I lay down, and I slept for 13 hours. When I got up the next day, I walked the dog, and then the day after, I got a phone call. And I answered it, and I hear on the other side, Gary, this is Kathleen from New York. That exhibition you were in, we had something left over. Can you check your mailbox? I said, sure, I'll run around and check my mailbox. So I did. Came back, and I said, oh, there's a letter from you guys. This is great. And she said, well, open it. And I opened it. It was a check for $650. So in 1980, that was a lot of money. And I was very hungry and very broke. So I started to yell and scream and jump up and down. And I picked up the phone, and Kathleen says, Gary, are you okay? And I could hear people laughing on the other end. And she said, for a moment there, we thought you'd been shot. I said, you have no idea. But then I thought about, angels hovering over buildings with light emanating from their heads, and that I should sing because angels watch over you. And I felt so grateful and good. Thank you.